Hello everyone and welcome back to the JP on Comms channel for the second edition of the What We've Learned series following Maidstone United's pre-season fixtures. And in today's episode we're going to be looking back over two pre-season games, the first of which being Leyton Orient and the second being Enfield Town. So stay tuned and hopefully we can find out what we've learned over the past week or so. So on to the first pre-season game of the video, and that was of course Leyton Orient. I think many Maidstone fans were expecting the Leyton Orient first team to come down. However, they did have a second game on that night versus Potters Bar, and Leyton did announce prior to the game that Maidstone would be receiving the second squad. So the team we did end up facing was actually put together with trialists, youth prospects and a few fringe first team players on the night. However, being the second game of pre-season, it was more about minutes than having a heavily contested game. The game did end up 0-0, so again, you could probably consider that an equal match. I think on the night, both teams had pretty decent chances, nothing major really. Maidstone coming closest with one of the trialists hitting the crossbar and James Alabi almost being able to tuck in the rebound from that, but it didn't quite work out. But in the first half, we did start off with Yusuf Mersin in goal, someone who performed very well at the Sheppey game a week prior. He also performed quite well in this game as well. Despite not being too heavily tested, he was just maintaining his consistency that we saw towards the end of last season when he did pop up in a couple of games when Hadder was suspended, and again proving himself in the pre-season to fight for that first team spot. We also saw new club captain Gavin Hoyt at left back for the majority of the first half, with Bhivesh Gurung at right back. We saw Jack Cooley and George Fowler at centre back. So again, a very disjointed defence in terms of what we're probably hoping to see going into the National League next season. But Gavin, of course, performed exceptionally as always, really pocketing people coming down his side. Very few chances did end up coming down whatever side he was playing on. So again, props to Gavin. Played the most games last season, had a well-deserved break in the off-season, and he's straight back at it, Mr. Consistent again. So again, I'm sure he's going to have a very good season ahead of him. Bhivesh Gurung performed very well. Right back, getting good minutes in again, showing his worth to this squad. He's now part of the first team, of course, not part of that development squad anymore. So hopefully we can see him kick on, get a few more minutes, prove his worth in this Maidstone United team. We also saw George Fowler performing quite well in this game as well during that first half, and his partner Jack Cooley as well after potentially a little bit of a rocky start versus Sheppey. He did seem a lot more comfortable in this Leyton Orient appearance, which of course is good for the Stones. We also saw Tushawn Walters feature. Unfortunately, he did come off about 20 minutes in, I think it was, with an injury. So again, that's not looking too good for him. Hopefully just precautionary, but we didn't see him feature in the squad for the Enfield game, which is coming later. So again, maybe more injury troubles there for TT Walters, but there was other good performers in that midfield as well. Regan Booty slotting straight back in, performing really well, dictating the tempo, dictating the play. Passing range is still there, of course, which is very good going into the National League. We also saw Perry Iandolo, or Iandolo, not quite sure on that pronunciation, but we're still with Iandolo for now. He did start the game in that midfield position. We saw at Sutton Common Rovers last season, he picked up their Player of the Year. Very successful loan spell. I think he did play in a more forward position for them, but looked pretty much in place. Someone who could feature in that first team squad against Leyton Orient. He's quite good in the midfield. Again, just these little passes and kind of touches around corners and things was what he was displaying in that game for me. So not the most established player in the squad, but someone who could pick up potentially a few minutes, especially in the cup games next season. So again, that bodes well in terms of our squad depth. And then we also saw Christy Patterson feature as well. Look sharp, look quick. It's Christy all over. Unfortunately, no goals, but I'm sure we will see that come after a goal he did score versus Sheppey last week. So again, hopefully just building more minutes, kicking on, and we can see a few more performances in that Enfield Town game. So on to the second half now of that Leyton game. So the second half of the Leyton Orient game is where, for me, the standout players did arrive. We saw the introduction of James Alabi, the new signing up front for the Stones, making his first appearance of pre-season for the club. So really good to see him get a run out. Again, unfortunately, did just miss out on that deflection off the crossbar, but close. He did get in a few decent positions, was caught offside a few times, but overall a pretty mellowed out introduction to the team. But it's his first 45 throughout the pre-season, so I don't think anybody's going to complain with that. We unfortunately didn't see Hadi Gandor score again either versus, he did score against Sheppey, but for me, the best player on the pitch throughout the two halves. He looked exceptional, very, very quick. We saw a lot more to his game versus Leyton Orient than we did at times last season. Very quick, amazing on the ball. He has got a rocket of a shot on him. Like I say, unfortunately didn't pick up a goal in this game, but the signs are there. I'm quite confident he's going to be a big performer for us in the National League next season. But again, my player of the match. Again, it's very hard to tell with only 45 minutes, but there were a few other good performers in that second half as well. Tom Hadler, again, distribution is improving, which is good. Only going to benefit us going into the National League, and having that competition with Yusuf Mersin, of course, is going to be quite good in terms of that rivalry between them. Performing for that number one spot is only going to benefit us, so thumbs up there. We also saw Joe Lowell playing, who I thought was quite good as well. There was one tackle that he did miss out on, but it didn't result in anything. Tom Hadler had it covered, so again, nothing to write home about, but a good solid all-round performance from him. And then another player for me who did perform very well was Henry Woods, the new signing, of course, from Gillingham, but he did end up playing a lot of games for Dover last season, so he's got a bit of a track record at some of our rivals. There's going to be a lot of pressure on him. I think he's going to be expected to drop into that midfield position, and again at a young age, I think he's only 22. It is going to be quite pressurised on his shoulders. Of course, the expectation to fill in for the departed Michael Phillips is there. The Gills and Dover connections is there, so again it might be quite a burden on him, but he has not shown that at all throughout pre-season. Very good against Sheppey, very good in this Leyton Orient game for me. Getting around the midfield, he looks so calm, so composed on the ball, and for a young guy going into probably the biggest season of his career, if he's going to be an established National League midfielder for a team who hopefully won't be fighting relegation, but we'll have to see. I'm expecting big things from Henry Woods after this pre-season so far, and he did only show that by kicking on even more in the Enfield Town game, which we'll get onto next. So on to now the Enfield Town game, the standout game of the last two pre-season fixtures for me. Not only did the Stones manage to win 6-1, which of course is a fantastic result against any opposition, but we also saw a first 11. Really, it was pretty much the strongest 11 that we could field, bar some absences. Gavin Hoyt, Joe Lowell, Luke, of course, Jack Barham, all out with knocks, I think. Lowell and Hoyt, can't confirm that, but they weren't actually in the squad at all, so can only assume that there was some sort of precaution after the Leyton game in the second half. Lowell did feature the first half. Hoyt did feature, so not seeing them today. Maybe they just had a little break, kind of recover, and we'll kick on again against some of the other opposition in the coming weeks. But yeah, so pretty much the strongest team we could put out, and despite the landslide victory, the thing that stood out for me the most was the fact that we had 6 different goal scorers. Now, of course, if you did follow Maidstone last season, you'll know we only really had about 3 decent, high-performing goal scorers in the squad. Luke, Jack Barham and Sam Corn were the only people who were in and around or above at least that double digits number. But in this Enfield Town game, 6 different goal scorers, and the goal scorers were Perry Ian Dolo, Sam Corn, Henry Woods, Dom Odesanya, James Alabi, and of course Sol Wanjau-Smith. So 3 of Hakan's new signings all picking up a goal. Sol Wanjau-Smith making his debut for the team. Alabi making his second appearance for the team, and has now racked up 90 minutes or thereabouts for the squad, which of course is good. And to see him scoring, and especially the goal that he did, if you haven't seen it, go over to the Stones TV YouTube channel. The highlights are up already, so you can see all the goals over there. But for me, every goal was fantastic in its own right. Dom and Perry both scoring good shots from the edge or outside of the box into the corner, which of course bodes well for them. Dom getting forward into that space, and again scoring another good goal. The goals that he did score last season were quite good for us, and he has got a shot on him, so hopefully we can see him be a bit more fruitful in his output, especially in the statistics wise anyway. But good to see Perry picking up a goal as well. Again, a really good finish, curled into the corner of the net. But for me, it was that first half that really stood out for me. It was 4-1 at half time. We'll quickly talk about the goal we did concede, get the negatives out of the way, I suppose, before we crack on with all the positives, as there were very many to talk about. So the goal did come from a long ball through the defence. Enfield were without their star man Mo Fowl, but that didn't stop them from scoring. We saw a long ball come through the middle of the field, and you can't actually see it on the highlights as the ball did go the whole length of the pitch, so you can't see what was going on in the defence. But it seemed to me like a little bit of miscommunication between George Fowler and Jack Cooley on who's picking up the man in the middle. It seemed to me like George Fowler was picking up one of the players on the right. Jack Cooley might have been left with the man in the middle, but didn't seem to pick him up particularly well, and his speed tracking back isn't fantastic. So George did try to recover, did try to stop the goal, but Mercy made a fantastic save, which unfortunately only rebounded to someone else bombing into the box. So again, a little bit of miscommunication perhaps. That recovery pace not quite there as of yet, so early on in pre-season. But again, let's not read too much into it. We won 6-1. Plenty of positives to talk about. So as I said, in that first half we did see pretty much our strongest available 11 on the field, and for me the standout performer was Stones' new man Sol Wanjau-Smith. He looked absolutely fantastic over on the left hand side, playing in that Luke role, being able to get down the line, cut in, beat a man, have a shot. Fantastic debut performance for him. You would never have guessed he was a new signing. You would never have guessed it was his debut. You'd never have guessed it was the first 45 minutes he's played in quite a while. So really good performance for him. He actually did set up Sam Corn's goal as well, by running straight down the line, along the touchline, beating his man and just knocking it back to Sam Corn, who was marauding through the middle with a late run into the box, which we saw is how he picked up quite a few of his goals last season. Good shot into the bottom right hand corner from Sam. So again, Sol slotting straight in, forming good partnerships with his attacking counterparts as well. We saw his goal actually come from a lovely assist from James Alabi. Some great hold up play in the middle, and Sean Sker is someone I did watch the game with yesterday, another commentator for Stones Live. I'm sure you would have come across him if you have been listening to Stones Live over the past few years, but Sean did actually say, go on, foul me, as Alabi was doing that hold-up play, and in the end he was brought down but did knock the ball off to Sol, created that opportunity for him, and it was fantastically finished. And again, as I say, seeing this link-up play between two new players who've likely never even played together before. I don't think there's been any behind closed doors games yet since Alabi did come in with Sol in the game as well, so really good to see them linking up the way they did. Alabi almost scored an overhead kick, unfortunately did hit the post, but his goal came from some fancy footwork with a curled effort into the right hand corner. So again, really good showing from him as well. He really did manage to perform to the best of his ability in that game. Obviously picking up the minutes versus Leyton did bode well for him. But again, another player who stood out for me, Henry Woods. The third game that he's played now for the Stones in this pre-season, and the third time he has impressed, I think, everybody watching. His passing is just really good, really accurate. His ability to dictate play be so calm on the ball when getting pressed. I think it's just going to be a really important player for us next season. A lot of the people I've spoken to have kind of echoed those thoughts in, he's going to slot straight into that midfield. Of course, it's pre-season. Let's not get too carried away, but from what we've seen so far, these are traits and characteristics which do tend to excel in the higher quality of the National League. So again, fingers crossed he can perform, carry this good form into the new season. And let's quickly kick on to the second half of the Enfield game. So in the second half, we saw the introduction of some more fringe players, Bhivesh Gurung making his way onto the field amongst a few trialists. We did make 6 changes, including Tom Hadler, into the second half. So it was quite a disturbed team from the first half in terms of how they were playing, their cohesiveness. Of course, chucking 3 trialists into the mix is not going to be fantastic in terms of maintaining that composure and cohesion from the first half. It's going to take, again, a bit of time to kind of warm up and get into the game. And we did see that throughout the second half, up until much later on, and the Dom Odesanya goal. We unfortunately did not see too much in terms of all-round squad performance. The defence did perform quite well. We did see a few of the trialists getting a couple of decent opportunities going forward, but nothing too much, nothing really to write home about. For me, at least anyway, I think some of these attacking trialists that have come in have been a little bit lackluster, you could say, in terms of their all-round performance, getting a couple of decent chances throughout a couple of the games so far. There's only one really that's kind of stood out for me so far, and that is Destiny Oladipo, who did feature in the Sheppey game, scored a fantastic goal on his left foot, but since then we haven't seen him come back, I don't believe. So perhaps he's gone on trial somewhere else. But in terms of the players that we did have, 2 wide men, I believe they were Ira Jackson Jr. and I think maybe Ruben Suarez Jr. I'm not 100%. It's a little bit confusing, obviously, if you don't know the players, to try and recall who they are. But again, neither of them particularly showing something that would convince Hakan at least to bring them in next season, but still plenty of time. This is what pre-season is all about. Again, I'm sure these players haven't played many games over the most recent of weeks, but we'd like to see a little bit more. A couple of them did come close with chances which you might have thought they'd at least test the goalkeeper, and unfortunately did put wide or high. But in terms of the players that the Stones actually do have already on their books performing, we did see a couple of goals later on in the half, as I say, from Dom Odesanya and Ian Dolo, both very good goals. And for me, these are the 2 players that really stood out in that second half. We also saw another trialist who did feature against Leyton Orient in the midfield. I believe his name is Paris Cohen Hall, did feature for Colchester last season as a fringe player because of some of his injuries, but a League 2 player, about 31 years old, trialling for the Stones, and he did feature in a more advanced position in the latter stages of the half. So he was quite dynamic in his usage. It's quite hard for him, I think, playing in that more forward role as a midfield player, but he's someone for me who was the more impressive out of all the trialists, but again, nothing much to write home about when it comes to them. So all round, when it comes to the Enfield Town game, I think we can say this is probably our best performance of the season, simply because we did actually play our strongest 11 in that first half, and I think that's exactly what Hakan would have wanted to see. The new players bedding in really well, the cohesive unit, already the chemistry looks like it's there. We've got a couple of away fixtures coming up next, I do believe. Folkestone Invicta and Cray Wanderers, I think, are our next 2 pre-season fixtures. So it's going to be interesting to see how we can get on versus those teams. Again, small opposition. Maidstone aren't actually going to be playing anybody in pre-season who should be that much of a test. Perhaps Dulwich is probably going to be the hardest game of the pre-season, the last one of pre-season on the 30th of July, I think, maybe the 31st. But yeah, so when it comes to what we've learned from this pre-season week, If you do have a little look back, we saw the introduction, of course, of Alabi, who performed very well in the Enfield game. Saw Wanjau-Smith making his debut, probably my man of the match for the Enfield Town game. Henry Woods, again, consistently performing at a very high level in this pre-season. And we also saw the return of Jerome Bidon-Williams in the first half against Enfield, straight back into normal practice, ball rolls, mugging people off, defending well, performing well, going forward well. You'd expect nothing less from Jerome, so good to see him back in the mix, of course. And hopefully next week we can see a few more players picking up a few more goals, and hopefully Jack Barham as well, towards the end of the pre-season, can be reintroduced following his injury sustained last season. So that is pretty much all I've got in terms of what we've learned from this pre-season week. So if you did enjoy the video and you are looking forward to a few more in the coming weeks, then do subscribe to the channel and do like this video, and I'll hopefully catch you in the next one.